You're listening to Ret Read Podcast. I'm Anna.
I'm Serge, and we're here to talk about books we've read.
Hope you enjoy. Hey Serge.
Hey Anna.
We're recording another episode of Ret Read Podcast.
Another book under our belt in the Fear Street series. How many more are there?
A lot.
Okay.
He's still writing new Fear Street books, so...
Oh man, it's crazy. So, RandoCast, we recently reviewed a movie, which I think, was that our first movie reviewed for the RandoCast?
I think so.
Yeah, it was a really bad movie, but it was related to the Red Read because it was mentioned in a book that we actually reviewed in a previous RandoCast.
Yeah, it was mentioned in Heroin Complex by Sarah Cohn.
Right.
And we watched it, so you guys don't have to.
Basically, if you find yourself reading Heroin Complex and you think to yourself, oh wow, a movie about 3 superheroes that are female, that sounds interesting, don't watch it. Basically, it's not great.
The sequel sounds pretty cool, though.
Yeah, the sequel sounds like...
Mad Max?
Exactly. It sounds exactly like Mad Max.
So what are you reading right now?
Well, I'm still reading The Mythology of Mexico and Central America. I am making progress. I've gotten through the creation myths. A lot of flood myths there, obviously, which is common in America. And also getting through all the corn myths. Of course, the creation of corn is an important part of the mythology there. Them being an agricultural society where, farming is very important. So you would expect that. Well, pretty solid book so far.
Any myths you want to share?
No, not really, but it's pretty cool. I'll definitely share some of my favorites at some point when I get done with the book.
And that'll be next year sometime?
Well, at the rate I'm going, I easily anticipate I'll be done this month.
Really?
Yeah, I think so.
Well, for all you astute listeners out there, you'll know that he's been reading this book since the first episode, I think.
Yeah, I'm making my way through it. It's definitely a good read. You're reading...
I'm reading an arc I got from NetGalley. It's called Spaceman of Bohemia. It's by Yaroslav Koffer. It's going to be published March 7th of 2017. I think it'll be released by the time this podcast comes out.
We're recording this before March 7th, but the rate we're going, this will probably be released. So by the time you're listening to this book is already available and you should check it out. I don't know. I didn't read it. Is it something people should be checking out?
I'm about halfway through it. It's pretty good so far. I can't speak. It might suck at the end. I don't know. But the first half is pretty good.
Anna was telling me about this the other day, and it's got this intense revenge plot line where this guy comes back. He got screwed over during the days of communism by this informant that had him tortured, but now that times have changed, he's actually rather well off and bent on revenge. Unfortunately, that informant has passed away.
It wasn't the informant, it was the guy torturing him.
Oh, the guy torturing him.
He wants revenge over how he was tortured, how his family was treated during the communist era of Czechoslovakia at the time. Because the guy's dead, he basically seeks revenge on the guy's son and the parents. So it's an elderly couple and a young child who have to pay the price for the dad/son's actions during the time. You feel for the family because should they really have to pay the price for something that they didn't commit? And it's an ethical question. Where do you draw the line at revenge? And who needs to pay the price ultimately in the end? Because if the person's gone, should you punish the person's family if it's a young child and elderly couple that had nothing to do with it, weren't even in the same city/town as the person committing the atrocities?
Well, one of the foremost legal authorities of human history, Hammurabi, once said that if a crime is committed, then mete out the punishment against the family members of the criminal. Let's say an architect designs a roof and then later the roof collapses and kills your son. You can go into court and perhaps if the architect is found guilty, then his son will be killed as punishment.
I'm glad we still use eye for an eye judicial punishment systems.
Well, it is the basis of most legal codes, although we have moved on since then.
Yes, I think we have. But this does dovetail nicely to the Fear Street book that we're going to review after the intermission.
Funny that.
Revenge. A big part of Fear Street Halloween Party. Coming up after the intermission.
Hey, so first of all, let's just launch right into it. Fear Street, the Halloween Party. How was our prediction accuracy, Anna?
I had predicted that... Well, first I predicted that the protagonist would be a female, which it kind of was, but it was actually from a male point of view, which was surprising, because the person on the cover was a female. So I had predicted that it'd be a female with a crappy boyfriend, which was actually absolutely untrue. He's actually a pretty decent boyfriend. I also said there would be no floating pumpkin heads, and I was correct. There were actually no pumpkins in the story at all.
Not a single jack-o'-lantern in the entire Halloween party.
Why are you not having jack-o'-lanterns at your Halloween party?
Maybe you're focused on other things.
She went pretty all out for everything, so no jack-o'-lanterns, fail. I said that the murder weapon would be a knife, which... It was.
It was definitely a knife.
But I said it was a male murderer because every other book had been one, and I was wrong. It was a female.
This should have been my time to go different and decide to go female murderer. Alas, no. I said male murderer and I was wrong. I said there would be a jack-o'-lantern, but it wouldn't be a real ghost. That's wrong. There was no jack-o'-lantern of any kind. I said it would be strangulation, and I don't think there was even any strangulation that even resulted in non-fatal injuries. There's no strangulation whatsoever in this book. Some people nearly asphyxiated, but that was about it. No strangulation whatsoever. And I said it would be a girl we've already met. Went out on a limb, and I was wrong. Everybody that she's friends with, we've already met. She's friends with Jade and Dina.
From the wrong number?
Lisa is still in it. I think Lisa broke up with Corey, because he's nowhere to be found.
I don't think they're attached at the hip.
This is like the second time that we've seen Lisa without Corey. My prediction's completely wrong on every single prediction I made. This was my worst prediction outing so far, and it did pretty good with the murder weapon there. So the plot, this was a short book for the Fear Street series. Only 147 pages. Normally they run about 165 or so.
But there was a lot in the 140-some pages.
Yeah, it was pretty dense. I feel like a little bit more care perhaps went into this book.
Well, that's because I feel like there was no room for filler in the book because they were at that party pretty quickly in the book.
Yeah.
Whereas in the other books, sometimes they're just, they need to drive a car and then they have to go be with friends and they're doing this. This book was like at that party.
And you know what? Good on RL Stine for not just sticking to a page number and saying, well, I guess I better create 3 filler chapters to get up the page count. He tells his story succinctly and gets his point across, and he leaves it at 47. It's fine.
Yeah, the book doesn't have a prologue. It actually starts at the Halloween party. In chapter 2, it actually goes 2 weeks prior to that. Mm-hmm. And you have maybe like a couple chapters leading up to the party. Then you go back to the Halloween party. So he jumps in there pretty quickly.
This book also has switching point of views where you have Terry, Nikki, and David at various points of time.
Yeah, it's mostly from Terry's point of view. Nikki gets 2 or 3, and David gets 1.
So basically what happens is 9 random kids get invited to the Halloween party at Justine Cameron's house. None of them can figure out what the connection is between them. They all get an invitation card with a coffin on it, and it says reserved for you. That's pretty creepy.
But that's really kind of cool for a Halloween party.
It is, but it was the first sign. And apparently no one can bring dates, and only these 9 people can come, and there's a couple other people that want to come. They keep getting denied.
Someone tries to invite a girlfriend, and Justine goes, if you guys really care about each other, you'd be okay with spending one day apart. I think that's also a sign that, like, something's not right.
Very quickly, the whole party devolves into a jocks versus wimps mentality due to the wide disparity of people invited. None of them are really very good friends with each other, but a few of them are on sports teams, some others are not, and so a rivalry brews up. And this actually goes back to the fact that the main guy on the wimps squad is a former friend of one of the guys on the jocks squad and is now dating the other guy's girlfriend. So they used to be friends, and then basically he stole the guy's girlfriend. They're not friends anymore. So that basically sparks this rivalry, and then they fall into 2 camps.
They're daring each other to go to this party because Justine Cameron lives on Fear Street. They're basically all hyped up of spending entire night at a party at Fear Street.
Yeah, the thing
on Halloween.
She doesn't even live on Fear Street. Basically, you park at the cul-de-sac at the end of Fear Street, you walk through the cemetery for 15 minutes, and then her house is like next to the woods. I'm not sure you can even park at her house. Not the best real estate.
Kind of weird. But the jocks and wimps thing kind of gets out of hand. They go kind of crazy with the different surprises they have for each other. And then Justine says, it's okay because I have surprises for you guys at the party. And
Nikki really hates the jocks versus wimp thing. She doesn't want her ex-boyfriend and her current boyfriend to fight because she still wants to be friends with her ex. She's a nice girl. She just wants everyone to get along.
Who wants to go to a party with that kind of mentality?
So the other thing is that it's supposed to be an all-night party. It's almost like a dare. Like, can you spend all of Halloween night at this haunted mansion on Fear Street?
It's a decrepit mansion that they're currently fixing up, which adds to its creepiness. hauntedness.
Well, what they say is that because the former owners died, they actually still haunt the place. That's the word on the street. They also say that every house on Fear Street that isn't currently occupied is haunted anyway.
Well, the last book was haunted, was it not?
That's true, yeah. For a short time, that ghost was temporally brief. Hey, so anyway, let's talk about Terry.
His costume for the costume party, he was a 1950s greaser.
Now, is that like a racial slur of some kind?
No, it's, remember Shia LaBeouf's character in Indiana Jones and the Crystal Skull?
Yes.
That's a greaser. I'm 90% sure. What's interesting is that...
The greaser refers to putting like all that Vaseline in your hair, right?
Right. Remember Shia LaBeouf's character walked around with a comb? He kept combing his hair.
Yeah.
So that's what a 1950s greaser is. I'm sure it would have made more sense in 1990 when this book was written because that was 40 years ago, whereas now we read it and it's way too long ago. Aren't we closer to 2050 than we are to 1950 at this point?
Yeah, oh yeah, of course. So basically, this guy is a nice guy.
He's an all-rounder. He does well in school. He has an after-school job. He's on the student council. He's on the tennis team. And he teaches his little sister how to ride a bike.
That's right. His monologue in the first chapter talks about how he's got so many things on his schedule, but he's not saying it to complain. He's just saying it like, oh, I need to make sure that I can dedicate myself to all these things equally and not drop any one thing.
Right, and still be a good boyfriend.
Yeah, this guy's pretty cool.
And he's been dating Nikki for 6 months, and he has a nickname for her, Funny Face.
Funny Face.
And it's really cute.
It's adorable. The guy is clearly in love with her, and he really cares about her. He's considerate, I think, thoughtful. He's a brave guy. Him and David are definitely like the two guys that get stuff done.
He's a little competitive.
Yes.
He did not want to lose that jocks versus wimps thing.
He was not going to lose that. He was really going to, got that kind of personality where he likes to win, which is frustrating for him because his science project is not going well. So everybody seems to have a science project, and his is on seed germination, and he can't get any of his seeds to germinate. The little subplot, like in the lead up to the parties, he keeps trying to figure out how he's going to do his project. He actually tries talking to his girlfriend about it, and I don't think she's very interested in seed germination. So speaking of his girlfriend, Nikki Meyer.
She came to the Halloween party dressed as a carnival reveler.
We're talking about like carnival in the European tradition where everyone dresses up in these big, beautiful costumes and puts on a mask or whatever.
I think she made everything herself.
Yes, and it's mentioned that's actually her hobby. She has a sewing machine in her room, and she's very interested in fashion. And sounds like, maybe she's going to become a fashion designer when she grows up.
Nikki's actually deaf. She's been deaf since an accident she had in 2nd grade, but she can apparently read lips well, and she can speak well, so people don't actually realize that she's deaf.
Also, her sense of sight is really good to compensate, and also she can apparently feel
the vibration from the music.
Yeah, so apparently, like, if the music has, like, a deep bass, she can feel it, and she's actually a pretty good dancer.
Terry has a funny way of talking about her. He says, she's not the prettiest or the smartest girl in school, but she is the most special.
The funny thing is that he says she's not the prettiest, and then he calls her Funny Face. She takes it in stride. She thinks it's adorable, and she doesn't get offended by him at all. Even though he sometimes gets jealous. And
I mean, she does hate the whole competitive thing between Terry and her ex, Alex, and she keeps saying things like, you guys need to stop, this is stupid, and hey, stop fighting over me, I can make my own choices. It's not just between you two, I have the world that I can choose from. Shut up. She's very independent.
Yes, and also very smart.
She's very curious.
Inquisitive, I would say.
Spoiler alert for the rest of the episode,
yeah.
But she was the only one who was confused and curious about why Justine was having this party and kind of figured it all pretty quickly. She was the only suspicious person in that group.
Yeah, everybody else was completely oblivious and stupid. And she saved their lives.
She was so brave.
Actually, she could have saved their lives even earlier if they'd actually listened to her.
Yeah, they were not using their brains.
No.
And they weren't even drinking at this party. Come on, guys.
No, there was no alcohol.
She's good friends with Dina and Jade, as we've mentioned before.
Yeah, that's basically it. She's just a really cool girl.
The next character, her name is Trisha Mccormick. She went to the party as a cheerleader. She's introduced as a good friend of Terry's.
Right.
He describes her as a short brunette with wiry hair. She's friendly, enthusiastic, and her dad has a firm who does electrical work, and they were actually doing work on Justine Cameron's, her family's mansion. And that's really all you know about Trisha.
Yeah, she gets name dropped various moments.
Because she's at the party.
Right.
But she doesn't really do anything. I think she squeals and cries at one point, and that's about it.
Yeah. Is she the one that runs out of the house near the end when she wants to escape, but then, like, trips and twists her ankle?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, so at least she has, like, a decent survival instinct. Unfortunately, she tripped over a plank that was left her by those douchebags. Otherwise, she would have, I guess she would have made it.
So we have Alex Beale. He dressed up as the Silver Prince. What's the Silver Prince?
I don't know what that is, but he's basically just in the skin-tight, sort of latex, spandex, whatever costume.
Is it like the Harlem Shake? Is it like one of those Harlem Shake costumes?
I think so, but it's silver and shiny.
He's also really muscly, so it fills him out very nicely.
Yeah, it looks really good on him. He used to be best friends with Terry. They grew up on the same street. They'd known each other since second grade or whatever. They were really tight. Unfortunately, Terry went and stole his girlfriend.
No, it said that Nikki broke up with Alex and then went to date Terry later. But that does bring up the question of, is dating your best friend's ex really a good idea?
Well, it really kind of spoiled their friendship and also nearly led to everybody's death due to all the distraction it caused.
Yeah, Alex is still not over Nikki.
Alex still obviously has feelings for Nikki, and I think a lot of this rivalry that the jocks versus wimps idea, that really stems from Alex's jealousy and his continuing feelings for Nikki, and he kind of just roped people into it.
If Terry's a good tennis player, why was he on the wimp side? Wouldn't he be a jock? I feel like that's truly what shows that it was really just Alex being pissy about Terry taking his girl.
Right, exactly. Yeah, so he immediately calls him a wimp and then lumps him in with the other guys there. They're not sports people. We got Shore coming back, Ricky Shore.
Hey, we're talking about Ricky Shore from The Overnight.
Right, and a couple other guys are just like a little bit not jocks. Yeah, so basically this guy's kind of a mild asshole, but he's not bad.
I guess his jealousy and his competitive nature just made him come off really horribly.
Right, but he's not a bad person.
Yeah, no, they come later in this book.
So anyway, so then we have Ricky Shore also invited to the party. He's not necessarily friends with any of these people. He's kind of friends with Terry, but not really anybody else.
Everyone still calls him, I mean, even if he's kind of friends with Terry, Terry still calls him an obnoxious joker who doesn't know how to dress, which is how he was described in The Overnight as well.
True. And the one time you do get described his regular clothing, he's wearing a t-shirt that is just stupid. I don't remember what the caption was. It was not amusing, but clearly Ricky thinks it is.
It was a shirt that was stained with orange juice that said, "Kiss me, I'm a Martian."
Right, I don't get it. Do you get it?
Well, he's a Martian. He wants to be kissed.
He didn't even bother washing it. He spilled orange juice on himself. Typical Ricky. So Ricky's science project is frogs. I'm not sure where he's going with this. He wants to talk about, how tadpoles mature into frogs, but he just brings a jar full of dead tadpoles and like a live frog lumped into a bag together.
Yeah, literally in a paper bag, the frog is like jumping in his bag, trying to get out.
Trying to get out of a bag that's filled with like a bunch of dead tadpoles. That frog was not happy. The one thing is, I wish he'd brought the Zat guns.
That would have brought things to an end pretty quickly.
Yep.
What are you doing, Justine? Next we got Murphy Carter. He comes to the party dressed as a zombie. Terry's only descriptions of him are, he's a party guy, he plays at linebacker for the football team, and that's about it.
Hey, he comes to the party and he has a pretty good time.
Well, except when they're about to get killed, but whatever.
Right. Angela Martiner?
Yeah, she comes as a leather biker girl, and Terry thinks that is like a really hot costume.
Yeah, he kind of gets turned on by that, but actually we don't know anything about her, and
all he says is that she's a slim, pretty redhead with a fast reputation.
Is she just another...
Key Thomas.
Okay.
Yeah, that's all we have. For the next character, we have Les Widow. He comes as a skeleton with a knife in his back. He actually comes in as part of the Wimp's practical joke against the jocks.
Yep.
The lights go out, and then his body's there, and the lights go back on, and everyone's freaking out.
Yep.
And then he goes, "Hey, I'm alive," and everyone's like, "Oh my god." And
a little bit of foreshadowing there. Again, this was a really nice, subtle foreshadowing. This is what I was talking about earlier when we talked about the journal plot synopsis, where this book is actually pretty well written. And here you have a subtle foreshadowing that you only see later on. This is not your Jonah Hill foreshadowing.
Joe Hill.
This is not a Joe Hill foreshadowing, where he shows up, does this little prank, and then you get an aside from the author going,
"That wouldn't be the last knife that would be stuck in him."
Exactly. Again, we have RL Stine showing his capability for the craft here. Really did enjoy that.
So what Serge is not so subtly alluding to is that Les is killed in this book.
Yeah.
He's actually stabbed in the chest.
And he's the only one to die.
Yep. and he's discovered with the knife sticking out of his chest, and at first, Terry, who finds him, thinks it's another stupid prank, and he goes, "We're on the same side, what are you doing?" And he starts poking him.
He's still warm. He tries to find the pulse.
And it goes downhill from there.
Yeah, it all starts unraveling at that point.
But then no one believes him.
No, because they have this whole prank thing going on.
Boy who cried wolf.
We don't know what Les's science project is,
Why
but
does he-
he's known as a science whiz, and so I'm assuming that he would have a pretty interesting science project, whatever it was. If it did say what a science project was, I just don't remember.
Why would he necessarily have a science project?
I mean, if he's in biology class, he would, because all the biology people have science projects.
Yeah, so it never explicitly mentions that he's in the science class. It just says that he's a science whiz. Because for our school, you weren't necessarily in the same science classes as the people in your grade.
I'm actually going somewhere with this, so it'd be helpful if you didn't shoot it down, because I want to tie it into the mythology.
Anyways, we'll get into why he's stabbed after we introduce Justine. So the next character is David Sommers. He's a basketball player. He's dressed as a basketball player, but he comes with a papier-mâché head instead of a basketball. He's on both the football and basketball team, but he's described as being quieter and less competitive than the rest of the jocks. And it seems like Terry takes a real liking to him.
Yeah, he and Terry basically team up. They're like the dynamic duo. Nikki really needs their help in order to basically get things done.
Yeah, David really steps up and does his part in the whole thing.
Right, although, honestly, if David and Terry hadn't teamed up to stop those bullies, I think everyone would have been fine. They should have just let those bullies, wreck the place.
Well, let's introduce the bullies. We met them before in The Wrong Number, Bobby McCory and Marty Danforth. And by the way, I now totally understand why Chuck was beating Bobby up and took his knife out, because Bobby is clearly not a likable guy. He's no redeeming qualities. He and Marty want to go to this party. They're really butthurt they didn't get an invitation, to the point where they corner Justine in a closet or a room. They basically start assaulting her.
Yeah, Terry has to come and save her. Terry's not a jock, I guess, so he's not used to this kind of thing, but he steps up.
So what they do later is, because they're so butthurt that they're not invited to this Halloween party, they get drunk.
Really drunk.
They get trashed, crash the party on their motorcycles, drive around her living room, and basically whip people with chains and start destroying the house.
Yep.
Raiding it for food, for valuables. It is crazy.
Basically, what happens is Terry tries to stop him. He gets knocked on the ground, and then Alex tries to stop him. He gets knocked on the ground. The uncle tries to stop him. He gets knocked on the ground. But then finally, Terry and David make some eye contact, and they figure out that
Bobby and Marty were too distracted trying to steal something.
Wine.
Steal wine.
Yeah. So what they do is they turn the motorcycles on, send one out right out the door, and it crashes. And then they're about to do it to the other one, and then they both get on the motorcycle and run away. But not before David pounds one of the guys' faces into pulp.
I mean, I know we're laughing about violence, but these guys are
coming.
They're horrifying people. I can't imagine what it would be like to be at a party and have this happen to you.
It's awful. The aftermath of this is when you really know something's going wrong.
Because everyone's like, we need to call the police, and Justine goes, "Oh, no police." It's like, oh.
Yep, no police.
Yeah, at that point, I'd probably leave.
I mean, everyone's really shaken up, and they could just all go home at this point, but they don't. Justine just puts on more music, and they relax, and it's like, WTF.
Yeah, we're almost getting to the plot. We have Uncle Phil. He's dressed as a clown. He's Justine's dad's younger brother. And I guess we're going to start unraveling things here.
He never got over the death of Justine's parents, which, spoiler alert, they actually lived in this house. They're the couple that died and are supposed to be haunting the place.
He's always wanted to get revenge on the people responsible for his brother's death.
Yep, he kind of dwelled on it a lot. I want to go back to, again, foreshadowing, his clown costume. It's a sad clown. It's got the frowning face and a single shining crystal tear coming out of one eye. But if Joe Hill was writing this, it would say, but by the end of the night, there would be real tears streaming out of those eyes. Which there were. But RL Stine tastefully leaves it at just the single fake costume tear, and then you're left to think back on it later as a nice foreshadowing.
Let's go to the last character we need to talk about, Justine Cameron, who started this whole thing. She's the person that invited everyone to the party. This is her late parents' former mansion. She was raised by her Uncle Phil, and his constant dwelling on needing revenge basically
warped her mind.
Warped her mind to the point where she needed to get that revenge. Her actual name is Enid, and she's described as beautiful, model-like, tall and slim with blonde hair and green eyes, and she's 29 years old, but somehow passes as a high schooler.
And this is probably why they were all, like, so hot for her, because they were probably attracted to that matured, like, developed figure.
But this must show how badly she wanted revenge, because I'm not that far from 29.
Right.
That is my age group.
Yeah, and you don't want to hang out with those people.
My desire to go to a high school, be there for, 2 months?
Yeah.
A month at this point? No. No.
We have a lot of nitpicks about this. I think we're going to get into this later. But basically, she's crazy.
She is so crazy. She's hell-bent on revenge. She quits her job, leaves her boyfriend to live with her uncle to, set this plan in motion. Because what happened was, her parents were killed driving home when she was 1 year old. And every single one of these kids invited to this party, their parents were in the cars that were drag racing, which ultimately led to her parents' death. Right. One of the cars actually crashed into her parents, and their car went off the road, burst into flames, and they died. Her idea was to get revenge, what happened to her parents, she was going to kill the kids of the people who killed her parents. That doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
Because these people are still alive. Why not take out your revenge on the people who actually did it?
Yeah, she's pretty crazy, but, obviously she's not going to be able to lure the parents into a party like this. So, this was the quick and easy way to get revenge, I guess.
There are quicker and easier ways to get revenge.
So the interesting thing is that actually Uncle Phil is the one that plans everything.
But he didn't know that she was going to go that crazy. He did not anticipate Les dying or her locking them in the dining room with speakers all over, blaring the sound of car crashes and explosions while setting the house on fire. He did not see that coming either.
Yeah, I think he just wanted to scare them.
Yeah, but then because he realized what was going on, he actually tries to confront Justine, and then he gets himself beaten up and gagged in the basement.
Yeah, so he was gonna die as well.
Yes, but she didn't care.
Yeah.
Because
she's crazy. So basically, I think his thing is that he's, dying of a terminal illness. He only has, a few months to live, and he just wanted to, spend the last days in his brother's old house. Justine comes back, and she's like, this is your last chance to get revenge.
Let's scare some teenagers?
Yeah.
That had nothing to do with this?
Right.
But what happened, actually, is Nikki, they had a treasure hunt during the party, where Justine is just trying to buy time, so they spend all night there. And that's one of the stupid games they end up playing to buy time. But she didn't set any boundaries, so they're allowed to go anywhere they want. So Nikki, because she's really suspicious and curious, she decides to go to Justine's room to see what Justine's like as a person.
Right, well actually, she's doing a sweep of the entire house. She's not looking for the treasure hunt items, she's just looking for suspicious things. And she gets to Justine's room, and she actually does a very thorough search. First of all, she realizes that it's got none of the regular teenage stuff in there.
But what was Justine wearing then? Was there only 5 pairs of pants and
Pretty
5
much.
shirts?
Yeah, exactly. She all she had was some dresses and stuff that she wore to school sometimes. Her books were just on the radiator, which is not a great place to keep books. The room was mostly empty. There was no desk to do any studying. Because guess what, guys? When you're 30 years old, you don't need to study to get by in high school. Turns out you can just wing it and it's fine. That was one clue. But then she goes in depth. She looks in a closet and she decides, you know what?
Well, it's already established the house has a lot of hidden doors and stuff. So she goes on a search in this closet to see if there's a hidden panel. And she finds one.
She sees a crack. She tries pushing on it and she's like, you know what? Maybe there's a knob, and guess what? There's a knob. And the whole secret back closet is revealed, full of fancy designer adult clothing and designer adult shoes. And
so that tells me that Justine is well off at 29 to buy all these designer things, but she's willing to throw it all away to kill some teenagers?
Yeah, and she would have gotten away with it too if it wasn't for Nikki. She actually would have gotten away, I think, right? Because the Shadyside Police Department is so inept, it would never suspect foul play, and that would basically be it. She came there under her completely assumed false identity. She could just disappear and go back to her old job and they'd never track her down.
Yeah, I think you're right, because the only reason they found Les's body was because Terry was off looking for Nikki, and then he finds the body and then alerts David, and that's why David goes to call the police. But if Nikki hadn't been scouring the mansion to find clues, then Terry wouldn't have gone out to look for her. and David wouldn't have gone to call the police because they had figured everything out already.
That's right.
Nikki actually finds a newspaper article about the accident, and then it all clicks because she sees the names of the drivers of the drag cars and
the passengers.
And the passengers. And she sees basically the parents. Because she'd already found a medicine bottle with Justine's, Enid name. So she knows that, Justine is actually Enid. And she sees her dad or whatever. Like, just the last names match the kids at the party.
Mm-hmm.
And she's able to figure out, oh, this isn't good. And previously at Pete's pizza parlor, she was reading Justine's lips while Justine was making a phone call.
That's where you first know that something's up. And so she's not suspecting Justine for no reason whatsoever. And this is another sweet Terry moment, right? Because he meets Nikki after school. He asks her, which way should we walk home, the long way or the short way? And she's like, oh, let's walk the long way so we can spend 15 more minutes together. She gets this really weird threat in one of her textbooks. Just a nasty note falls out. It says, you were gonna wish you were blind too. This is just a nasty thing. And she looks really upset. And he's like, you know what? Why don't we take an even longer detour and go home via the pizza parlor, and then go out for cokes. He's just such a sweet guy. Actually, his first reaction was to pound Alex's face in, and she tells him to calm down and just pretend it didn't happen so the bully doesn't get the satisfaction, whoever it is that sent the note. She doesn't think it was Alex anyway. And they end up having cokes, and she looks across the room because of her keen eyesight. She can actually read lips from across the room into a phone booth. What is Enid saying?
They'll pay. Every one of them will pay.
Dun dun dun. Right? I mean, damn. So, there's actually a reason why she's searching the whole mansion. She knows something is up. So, the other thing is the jock versus wimp thing. You thought it was kind of,
They played pranks like putting shaving cream in the shoes of the jocks. Someone got a certificate or a phone call saying that, I think, was it Angela or Trisha got a phone call saying that she had won a dead fish in a wimp contest? And then Terry opens his locker and finds a plucked chicken head on his tennis racket.
Yeah.
Are these pranks?
Yeah, well, the funny thing is, the plugged chicken head, that was deemed to be, where it just went too far. It's the shaving cream and the shoes or whatever is all good natured, but then it turned really nasty. It's like a chicken head. I mean, whatever. I mean, we already saw the dead cat. The bloody dead cat
that
in the
Lisa
locker.
just didn't care about.
Right, that's nasty. Like a chicken head.
No, chicken head's pretty disgusting, but is that a prank? And also, the dead fish in the wimp contest, are they in 2nd grade? What kind of prank is that? I'm sorry, that's not even.
Prank phone call.
That's not even.
Hey,
there are better.
You know all about prank phone calls.
Yes, and Chuck could give them a lesson or two.
That's true. The Phantom of Fear Street, right? That would be pretty intense.
That would be intense.
Yeah,
and by the way, Nikki is friends with Dina and Jade, so come on.
So I guess we have some nitpicks.
Okay. So, a total of 9 people were invited to this party. But for some reason, when Terry finds an invitation, it's like this big thing in school and everyone's talking about it. But it's only 9 people who were invited. And, Lisa is going around, trying to get...
She's fanning the flames.
She's trying to get interviews with the people who got the invitations, and then she's, standing at the school steps announcing the names of the 9 people who were invited.
It must have been a slow rumor day, and she was just trying to get something started. I think the reason it's a big deal is because they have a 29-year-old going to their school that's, super sexy, and everybody's just, enamored with her, and then she's having a party, and people are like, whoa.
They don't know she's 29.
They don't know. That's why they're all confused about her. The thing about this is my nitpick here. This is going back to the woeful state of parenting on Fear Street and Shadyside. All of these parents, all their kids have to ask them for permission to go to this party. And obviously, as a good parent, you'd ask, oh, well, who else is going? Where are you going? Okay, if you're a parent of one of these kids and you hear the guest list and you hear where they're going, you don't think one of these 9 sets of parents is going to be suspicious about it?
My parents were really, really strict Asian parents, and they would not have really asked me that.
No. Well, okay, I think you're missing the point.
Right.
You were involved in a fatal car collision as a teenager with 9 other people. All of you went through this together. You know who all of them are. Fast forward 20-some years, all of their children, including yours, are getting invited to a party at the house where the people that died in that collision used to live. You don't think one of those 9 sets of parents would catch on to that? If I was living with the knowledge that I'd been involved in some dumb teenage shit and somebody died as a result, those names would be burned into my mind, that the Quarry Mansion name would be burned into my mind, and if
Cameron Mansion.
Cameron Mansion. And if my kid went like, oh, I'm going to the Herpeter party with all these people, I'd be like, A, none of these people are even your friends. B, I know who these kids' parents are. And C, you're going to the what mansion?
Well, hold up. Because if you look at it, Alex and Terry used to be best friends, and Terry is also friends with Trisha and Nikki, and Ricky has also been in some classes with Terry. So it's not like they don't know each other. And also, two of the characters are.
You don't think the parents would catch this?
I think they try to put it behind them. And I don't think they necessarily ask, because did your parents ever ask for a detailed guest list when you were a teenager?
My parents always ask me who I'm with.
That's nowadays, but did they ask in high school?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
They asked the list of every single person?
Sure. And I know your parents did too. You always had to tell them, oh, well, so-and-so will be there because blah, blah, blah.
Oh, I had to tell them people because otherwise they wouldn't let me go out.
So basically what you're saying is you have a nitpick with my nitpick.
Yes, I do.
Okay.
Because these kids do hang out with each other. It's not totally weird that they would be invited to a party.
It's not...
Because I don't think the kids said, oh, I'm only one of 9 people and these are the other kids. I don't think any of them had that sort of relationship with
So
their
you don't
parents.
think there's any way the parents could have prevented this?
I think they might have been able to prevent it if they left the town they grew up in. And I think it's also kind of weird that every single one of them have a kid that's the exact same age and that they all live in the same place.
I mean, maybe the revenge is... Okay, yeah, that is weird. Maybe they have some kind of weird, like, blood pact. And they actually, like...
I got it. They're all part of that cult.
Or maybe they're not part of the cult. Maybe it's like that Eyes Wide Shut or that Dan Brown book. What's it called?
Da Vinci Code?
Yeah, where they have like weird ritual sex orgies.
Yeah.
And so that's why all the kids are the same age. Maybe their parents are real weirdos.
I mean, I do feel like after 28 years, if it's something that they haven't been able to move on from the way you're talking about, I don't think they'd be able to have any sort of life that's livable because you'd be carrying that guilt to that degree.
Okay.
I think by 28 years, maybe it's still with them, but not to the point where the name Cameron would raise an eyebrow.
I see.
Justine Cameron is supposed to be, 16, 17 years old? Mm-hmm. They're not going to assume anything about someone that young.
That's true. Okay, so what was your next nitpick?
So Justine, I talked about that stupid treasure hunt that she had in order to kill time.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry. Because she didn't put any rules and they were allowed to, rip the house apart and find every single hidden thing, wouldn't she know that someone would go snooping through her shit? Like Nikki obviously did?
Yeah.
She did not plan this out well. They seem pretty content and just dancing.
You know what the funny thing is, though? I don't think any of the other kids that weren't Nikki would have even caught on to any of the stuff that she noticed in her room, though. That's the thing. They were all, pretty enamored with Justine, and they were not going to suspect her of anything.
I mean, Terry did accuse her of being jealous.
Yeah, I mean, the dance scene where Terry dances with Justine, and she, holds him really close, and he can smell her.
Yeah, she dances really closely with all the guys, and she kisses some of them. You're 29 years old, and these are 16-year-old boys.
She's really getting off on the fact that she's about to murder these people.
There's so many things wrong with you.
Yeah, I think she's getting some kind of sexual satisfaction from the knowledge that she's about to murder these people, and she's just toying with them. It's pretty weird.
She's probably the craziest murderer we've had. All the Fear Street books so far?
Yeah.
She's probably the most twisted.
She's really twisted. Which brings up our next nitpick. Shadyside High does no background check whatsoever and allows one of their students to get killed by a 29-year-old psychopath. This is the real story here, folks. This is the inept, incompetent school administration that lets a murderer in to kill one of the students. It's a pretty big problem here.
She's 29. What records was she making up during this time?
Yeah, I mean, she has to come up with some kind of fake identity and get a transcript that she can transfer in.
She might have been a teacher in her previous life, but I mean, she did a lot of traveling. I don't even know how she would have the time, because they did say she went all over the world.
Yeah.
And, had a lot of designer clothing and did a lot of traveling to buy clothing. So I don't get it. How did she have the time to do all this? This is the second time that the high school has failed in vetting.
Right.
And by the way, that was also with a female murderer.
Right. So I'm gonna launch into a little bit of a Fear Street mythos conspiracy theory here. So my idea here is this. I think the corporation wanted Les to be dead.
Les was killed because his dad was the one who was driving the car that ultimately crashed into Enid's parents. So she wanted him to just die quickly.
And so what I'm thinking is, basically she was used as a pawn by the corporation to remove Les. I think his high school science project was actually getting a little too close to the truth. All of these biology experiments that the other students are doing, tadpoles and seed germination, this is like basic high school stuff. This kid was a science whiz, and I think what he was going to be researching is something about the biological effects of the Fear Street clay, or maybe the stones. Maybe he was close to figuring out why there's no birds in the Fear Street woods. There's a lot of biological things going on here. The giant gerbil, things to that effect, mutations. Something's going on here, and this is all part of that mineral that they want to mine here. If they know that Justine is planning something, they may be able to pull strings and help her pass the background checks and get the various documents she needs in order to infiltrate the high school, because they know that Les is her ultimate target, and they can bury that information that's about to leak out. A little conspiracy theory, Fear Street mythos tie-in over here. That could explain how she got in. Now, of course, we're not told about what Les's project is, but, you know, RL Stine's been very good about kind of just hinting tangentially at this corporate conspiracy without actually giving it away.
Why does he need to have a science project?
If he did, it could be...
Oh, I see. There's that potential.
Right.
That at some point.
Yeah. What's a good way for the corporation to get rid of somebody like that? Have a deranged murderer take care of it.
Have an accident.
Yeah.
Which is ultimately my nitpick about Justine. There are so many ways to kill the people who actually were part of the accident, or the people involved that...
She wanted to torture them, right?
There's ways to torture people.
She wanted them all in the same room together and to have a torture.
She wanted to be the guy from Saw. But she didn't have the guts to pull it off. So she ended up torturing 16-year-olds. Instead of the people who she should have been seeking out her revenge on.
Yeah.
That's essentially what it is.
That's true.
She couldn't be the guy from Saw, so she ended up being this, like, twisted high school murder person.
So at one point they play Truth or Dare, except they just call it Truth. And Ricky has to talk about his experience on Fear Island. Ricky does, like, all his buddies a solid. He doesn't actually rat them out.
And they all ask Justine to tell her truth, and she says, no, I'll do it last. And she basically does it after she locks them all in the dining room. And outside the steel-barred window from the other side, she tells them the entire story of why she's going to kill every single one of them. Yeah. So at least she played her part in the game and kept her promise.
The thing is, at this point, like, Nikki and Terry know the truth. None of the others believe them. I could nitpick here and say, like, why don't Nikki and Terry just run away at this point? She can't stop them.
Well, Nikki specifically said... They'll all die if we aren't here. We need to help them. If we're here, at least we know the truth. Like, Nikki specifically says that to Terry.
Right, but they would have been more able to help from outside.
But they didn't know what she was going to do. For all they knew, she was just going to shoot every single one of them. But at least Nikki and Terry would be...
But if they were outside, she wouldn't be able to lock everybody up and set the place on fire.
But they didn't know that was her plan.
Yeah.
I mean, David was already gone at this point, too.
It's true.
And having her there in the end did save everything. What happened in the end was, place is set on fire, everyone is screaming and crying and pounding on the glass and trying to open the doors, and nothing is...
This is an amazing scene, by the way. This is like those, you know, in those World War II movies where, you know, you're in the midst of battle and then that shell explodes right next to your main character. And he's shell-shocked and he can't hear anything. He's got this, like, faint ringing in his ears and everything's quiet. And you see the people just, like, screaming and panicking and running around with their hair on fire. And he's just, like, slow motion, like, experiencing all this. This is her because she's deaf. There's, like, super loud car crash sounds playing through, like, a very expensive speaker system. Nobody can hear anything because it's deafening. And they're all screaming and panicking and just, like, or just resigned to their fate. Like, Ricky's just staring at the door, catatonic about, like, the fact that he's about to die. She's the only one with a cool head. It's such a cool scene where she's methodically trying to figure out a way to get out and thinking about it logically and trying to get through to these people.
Right. So she sees that these people are trying to claw through the door and the windows and they're not succeeding. And then she remembers that at one point she was actually knocked out and taken down to the basement via a dumbwaiter. So she knows that there's a dumbwaiter in the house, and she basically goes to Terry, calms him down, gets him to touch her face, and he just, like, instantly, like, okay, this is funny face, you know. And they connect, And she goes, dumbwaiter, lower me, I can get out this way.
Yeah, so she gets lowered to the basement where she finds Uncle Phil. He's tied up.
Well, there's actually a cool scene while she's in the dumbwaiter because it gets stuck halfway down to the basement, and she realizes she just needs to keep jumping. She needs to jump, try to get it down with that, otherwise she'd be stuck there and everyone would just die. And it's pretty awesome.
She gets out with the help of Uncle Phil, who knows where the crowbar is.
Yes. He didn't realize that Justine had actually lost her mind, and he's like, holy shit, we need to get out.
So he grabs a crowbar, they pry open a boarded up window in the basement, they get outside, and then he's able to crowbar the metal bars on the kitchen window. And so everybody can crawl out. My nitpick here is that, so basically, Les's body is in there. He's sitting at the head of the table, all stabbed to death. Justine put him there. The thing is, earlier on, when Terry first finds Les, he runs back and gets David and him come back, and Les's body's gone, just a pool of blood there, and like a trail of blood leading to the window. They run to the window, and there's Les just thrown out the window, lying on the roof, and it's raining really hard, and like there's thunder and lightning. Freaking Terry climbs onto like the slippery wet roof in the middle of the rainstorm, retrieves Les's body, and brings it back, and they cover it with a blanket. If you're gonna do that and risk your life, at least recover his body from the raging fires so that his parents have something to bury.
You can only ask so much from panicking 16-year-olds, is all I have to say about that.
That's true.
So the reason David's not there is that he left to go call the police after they had discovered Les's body, because he's like, one of us has to go, and I'll go while you stay back. But as he's leaving through the cemetery, here come Bobby and Marty.
He can't even call the police because the payphone is at the corner of Mill and Fear Street, which is a ways up, and all the cars are parked at the end of Fear Street. And Bobby and what's his name?
Marty.
Bobby and Marty slashed every single tire in every single car. And so he can't drive all the way up the entirety of Fear Street on like flat tires.
So he's actually thinking of just running to someone's house and ringing the doorbell, asking to use their phone.
But instead he gets attacked.
He actually hits his head against a tombstone.
And gets knocked out. And then they freak out that they're going to get accused of killing him. So they hide his body in a shed, his unconscious body, just drag him.
Yeah, but he wakes up later and he does manage to go to someone's house and call the police.
Yeah.
And he actually runs back while everyone is running out of the house.
Yeah. If it wasn't for Nikki, he would have come back just in time to, like, see them all die through the kitchen window.
That's traumatic.
Yeah, it would have sucked for him. Luckily, Nikki was there and saved the day. Another in a long-running series of kick-ass female protagonists in the Fear Street series. Props to RL Stine. I mean, these girls kick butt, for sure. And Terry's the first nice boyfriend. So there we go. Something's happening. This book has got a lot of things to like about it. 90s things. We read the
2006 reboot.
Reprint.
And
it's got a pumpkin on the cover. There's no pumpkins, we mentioned earlier. There was a disembodied pumpkin head chasing Nikki on the original cover. Nothing, I don't think, got really changed.
Yeah, I mean, they had CDs in 1990, right?
Yep, they did.
So, the only thing that I can think of was they had a phone booth in the pizza place in the aughts. That must be like the last decade where phone booths in some sort of public establishment is a thing. I mean, Wi-Fi hotspots are probably the thing now.
That's right. Yeah, you don't really see phone booths in restaurants anymore that much.
The Cameron Mansion phone line is cut. And
no one has a cell phone, so...
But by 2006, people would have cell phones to make that call. Like
I had a cell phone in 2006. I had a cell phone before 2006 when I was still in high school.
I got my first cell phone in 2005.
I got my first cell phone in probably like 2002 or 2003.
I know my mom had a cell phone in the early aughts.
Yeah.
That sometimes I was allowed to take out if I were going out with friends.
Exactly. Yeah, well, so I had this like clunk of a brick. I would have to take it like whenever I left the house to go hang out with friends. My friends made me take it so that I, would be able to contact them in case of an emergency or whatever.
Yeah, so that's something that was striking. That you could assume that maybe this place had no reception, so it wouldn't have mattered if they had cell phones.
Right, because of the weird clay and the mineral deposits and whatnot really screwing with the reception. That might be like worth a reread of some of the reprints to see if that connection continues. I don't know why I'm pushing this conspiracy theory so hard. It just seems like
I mean, I think it's there. We see it. We see it, RL Stine. Listeners, do you guys see it?
Yeah, hit us up in the comments if you guys have been listening to these podcasts and to our mythos theory here, and you're starting to see the same stuff that we're seeing here. Are we crazy, or is this for real?
this is a new section, but what were you thinking when you were reading the book? Because when I was reading the book, at first, I thought it was one of those books about, like, stealing youth. I did think she was, like, an older person, because Enid does sound like an older name. So I was like, oh, is Enid Justine's real name, and she's sort of inviting these people so she can steal the youth from them so she can always be young? And that was, like, one of the quick thoughts that I had while reading it. And then later, when it was obviously, like, a revenge story, I thought that, the whole Bobby and Marty thing, like, maybe they would just die in whatever she had planned, or they would end up, like, bumbling to save the day.
I thought that might happen. I thought maybe they get caught up in it and maybe, like, be the ones that end up dying. As far as, like stealing youth, yeah, I kind of also had this nagging suspicion maybe she was older than she let on. I definitely suspected her from the beginning myself, but I did not really have a theory, like stealing youth or anything like that. Even revenge, I wasn't sure what her beef was. I mean, obviously, when she's lip read in the pizza parlor, she's going for revenge.
Yeah, that comes on page 34 or something.
Yeah, but you're not quite sure exactly what she's revenging, what her beef is. Something is going on, though, so I definitely felt that reading the book.
Did you think there'd be anything supernatural as you were reading it? Because after Haunted, it's all possible now.
I did not suspect anything supernatural, no. All bets are off now that Haunted's come out, but no, I did not. I see you thought, just like I did, that the 29-year-old thing flirting with teenagers.
Because this book came out in 1990, she was born in 1961?
She's kind of getting it on with some young kids.
She's like my parents' age.
Yeah. So it's a little bit weird.
On the grand scheme of her issues, that's up there, is all I have to say about that.
It adds an interesting facet to this book. An interesting facet to her insanity.
When Nikki was going through her stuff, she saw a picture of Enid and her boyfriend, and said that the boyfriend was at least 10 years older than her.
Yeah, maybe there's, something going on with her and her uncle. I don't know. Kind of a weird...
I actually did think that the older guy was Uncle Phil, because he's, like, wearing all this clown stuff, so I was like, oh, maybe they're, like, an older couple that's, like, doing something together. Like Crimson Peak, almost.
Right. Yes, that was creepy. Their house is built on Fear Street clay.
And it's decrepit.
So, there you go. A lot of Crimson Peak things going on in the Fear Street series. If you guys haven't seen Crimson Peak, definitely a recommended movie. No? Anna's cringing.
It wasn't that great a movie. It's only good if you're really interested in the Fear Street mythos, because that movie stole a lot from that.
I think so. So, how many plucked chicken heads out of 5 would you give this book?
So, on the Fear Street scale, because all the Fear Street books are on a scale, I actually think this is the best Fear Street book we've read so far. And I do have to give it a solid 4 out of 5.
I have to agree with you. On a Fear Street scale, this book is really, really good. Of all the Fear Street books we've read, this is also my favorite. A couple of them came close. Obviously I did like Attack of the Killer Canoes, I believe, was one of the ones I liked in the past. But this one is a solid... Obviously, I'm not rating on a Fear Street scale. I'm rating on my actual scale, and I'm giving this a 2.5. So this rounds it up to a 3. Going into this podcast, guys, let's be honest here. I didn't think I was going to give any of these books a 3. I may regret this choice and later on downgrade it in an upcoming RandoCast, but as it stands right now, this book is a 3. Congrats, RL Stine, and Joe Hill, take note.
Read Halloween Party to figure out how to write a book without anvils.
So that's that. Predictions for the next book.
So the next book is The Stepsister. When she moved into Emily's room, the terror began. It's a picture of a girl, I assume it's Emily, reading a book with her evil stepsister, like, standing behind her glowing. So this actually brings me back to, if you've read The Babysitter's Club, I think it's book 31. It's called Dawn and the Wicked Stepsister, where Dawn and Marianne's parents finally get married. Like, Dawn's mom and Marianne's dad finally get married. And they move to Dawn's house because it's bigger than Marianne's family house. And instead of Marianne moving into the guest room, so she would have a room of her own, Dawn and Marianne have the dumbest idea ever that Marianne would move into Dawn's room and they would share a room. And that totally blew up in their faces. Even though they're best friends, they were, like, totally not compatible. Like, one liked studying with music, one hated studying with music, one needed to have, like, a really messy room, one had to have, like, a really neat room. And it, like, totally blew up, and they ended up hating each other to the point where Dawn had to sneak in through the barn's secret passage to the room and basically haunt Marianne for a night. And Marianne decided, nope, I need to move out. And right after she moved out to, like, the guest room, they became friends again. So when she's reading this cover, it's like, oh, this is the Fear Street horror version of that same exact book.
Yeah, so here it looks like Emily is actually reading the stepsister's diary, maybe. She's got this look of surprise on her face, like, oh, I can't believe she wrote that about me. And then her stepsister's looking at her, like, all angry, like, I can't believe you're reading my personal diary. So that's probably going to be a thing. The real terror, I'm going to guess that somebody gets murdered in this book. And that the murder weapon is going to be strangulation. I'm gonna go for strangulation. You know what? I was wrong last time.
I wanted to go with strangulation.
It's gonna be strangulation, and murderer will be. I'm gonna go with male again.
Really?
Yeah.
See, I'm not gonna do that. I think it's going to be a female.
Okay.
I think it's going to be a female. I do think she's reading something private of Emily. Emily is reading something private of her stepsisters, because why else would she be so angrily staring at Emily for doing that?
Yeah, that is a massive RBF there.
Don't read someone's diary. It doesn't matter if you're sharing a room. That's their private thoughts. I'm going to say the stepsister's involved with something. I will say the murder weapon. I'm going to say stabbing, but I'll say 40% chance is not with a knife.
I also think that the stepsister's involved with something.
Okay.
Which is why I guessed male murderer in this case, because I think we're going to have a little bit of a twist there. Maybe you're meant to suspect the stepsister, but there's actually something else she's involved in that leads to some stuff going down.
I think maybe RL Stine has had his fill of male murderers, and it's time for the females to be killers. And it started with the last book, and he'll keep doing it with this book.
Could be. All right, locked and loaded on the predictions?
No.
Yes.
No.
Yeah, all right. Awesome. We'll see you guys next time. There might be a couple more randocasts in between, and as always...
Thanks for listening. We really appreciate it.
Peace.
Thanks for listening to another thrilling episode of Rhett Read Podcast.
If you like what you hear, give us a shout out.
If not, let us know why in the comments.
Don't forget to rate, review, comment, share, like, and subscribe.
You can follow us at Rhett Read Podcast on Twitter and Facebook.
Or send suggestions or fan mail to red.read.podcast@gmail.com.
Until next time.
Peace.